You know that feeling when you look at something tiny and just feel a sense of wonder, a little bit of comfort, maybe? Well, today we're diving into why that happens. We're going to explore the surprising power of small things.
Okay, so to kick things off, let's start with a really cool puzzle for your brain. One you've probably seen 100 times and never even thought twice about.
So take a look at this. At first glance, it looks like a little model car, right? Something you could put on your desk. But here's the secret. That is a real full-sized car. So the big question is, why is our brain so easily fooled? What you're really looking at is a photographic illusion. See, the image was probably taken with something like a smartphone's portrait mode, which creates what's called a shallow depth of field. Basically, the background gets super blurry while the car stays perfectly sharp. And it turns out our brains have this little shortcut. When we see that specific effect, we immediately jump to a conclusion. And this whole thing actually has a name: miniature faking. It works because the only time we normally see that super blurry background effect is in macro photography. When a camera gets really, really close to something tiny. So when our brain sees a big object like a car with that same effect, it just defaults to what it knows. It goes, hey, I've seen this look before, but only with small things. And boom, just like that, a real car becomes a toy in our minds. But this cool little camera trick, it actually reveals something much, much deeper about our own psychology. Let's dig into why we are so fascinated with the power of small. And misquote from archaeologist Stephanie M. Lengen Hooper, wow, it just nails it. She says, "The miniature is so compelling because we can love it and it cannot hurt us." That single idea right there is the key to unlocking why we have this deep, almost primal attraction to tiny things. And this feeling of safety, it really breaks down into a few core ideas. First up, you've got control. A miniature is something we can hold, we can manage. It's totally non-threatening. Then, of course, there's nostalgia. I mean, think about toy cars or doll houses. They're a physical link right back to our childhood. And that brings a sense of safety. A tiny object can almost feel helpless, like something we need to protect, which in turn makes us feel safe. It also becomes a huge form of self-expression. The things we collect, whether it's action figures or fridge magnets, tell a story about who we are. And finally, there's intimacy. To really see the details of a miniature, you have to bring it close, into your personal space. You create this private little connection with it. But this isn't just about our own personal quirks and collections. This fascination has had a massive, and I mean massive, impact on a societal level. Let's see how these tiny objects can carry some seriously big ideas. Because this impulse to interact with small things, it's not new, not by a long shot. In fact, it's played a powerful role in shaping the course of history, especially during moments of huge change. To see what I mean, we're going to jump in a time machine and go all the way back to the 4th century BCE. After Alexander the Great's conquest, you had all these Greek and Macedonian people moving into Babylonia. Two very different cultures suddenly living side by side. So in this massive, world-changing moment, how did regular people figure it all out? They used these tiny little terracotta figurines. They literally used them to navigate their new multicultural world. And the result? Not conflict, but a brand new, blended culture that was all about shared values.
So how in the world does a tiny clay figure do all of that? Well, it happens in stages. First, you have the encounter. These two groups need to find some common ground. The figurines become a low-stakes way to experiment. You can try out a new idea, a Greek hero, a new style of clothing, in miniature form without it being some huge real-world statement. And what happened next is just amazing. The little figures that represented shared values, things both cultures could get behind, they got amplified. They became super popular. But the ideas that were offensive to one culture, they got marginalized. They were just rejected or ignored. A simple, tiny object became the social testing ground for an entire society's future. It's incredible.
And we can see exactly how this worked. For shared heroism, the Greek hero Heracles was a huge hit in figurine form. Why? Because the Babylonians had their own lion-hunting hero gods. It was instant common ground. For blending traditions, you start seeing figurines of traditional Babylonian nursing mothers, but suddenly they're wearing Greek-style clothing. A new hybrid identity was literally being created and accepted in clay. But check out this last one. The nude male body was a big deal in Greek art, but it was offensive in Mesopotamia. So what happened in the world of miniatures? It was basically ignored. It shows how these tiny objects helped people respectfully navigate their differences.
Okay, so this power of small objects to negotiate our external world has a direct parallel in how we can use them to understand our internal world. And that brings us right into the modern practice of art therapy. This is really the core connection. Just like those ancient Babylonians used physical objects to make sense of their society, modern therapy uses the creation of objects to help us map out and even heal our own minds. The whole idea here is making the intangible tangible. Take worry dolls, a tradition from Guatemala. A child literally whispers their anxieties to these little dolls, physically moving the worry out of their head and into an object. Or think about clay emotional sculptures, where you might just mold clay into some abstract shape that represents a big feeling like grief. It externalizes it, makes it something you can look at and manage. Even drawing a simple emotional gauge, like a thermometer, can turn the intensity of a feeling into something you can actually see and control. And this process also helps us build our own story, our own narrative. There is an exercise called locked memories, where you write down something difficult and literally seal it in a box. That simple act can give you a real sense of control. Or healing stones, where you write positive affirmations on smooth stones. They become these physical anchors of strength you can literally hold in your hand when you need them. And creating a chronicle in a box, basically a personal time capsule, lets you put your whole life journey into a single contained object that represents your story. So, from a simple photo trick to ancient history and modern therapy, we've seen the profound impact of small things. So, what does this all mean for you and for the little objects scattered throughout your own life? Okay, let's bring it all home. What started as a simple trick of the camera, that car that looks like a toy, ended up revealing a deep truth about our minds. Our love for tiny things isn't just about them being cute, it's rooted in our psychological need for control, for safety, and for nostalgia. We saw how, throughout history, miniatures have literally helped entire cultures navigate huge changes. And we saw how we, today, can consciously use small, created objects to understand and even heal our own complex inner worlds. Which leaves us with one final thought. It's a challenge, really. The next time you look at your keychain or your fridge, think about what it says about you. What story are the small objects in your life telling? And what kind of power have you given them?